Trump right now, he looks noticeably worse. And I think
that was never that. No. That was never the accusation of Biden. It wasn't that old man looks older, old man looks less energetic. It was old man looks like he has dementia.
Did you see Trump when he was like, what do you feel about Kirk? What's going on? Yeah, I'm not that sad about it. Anyway, look at my ball. Look at my ball.
That was a bad look. That was a bad look. And I understand. I don't think it was. I understand what he was trying to say, but optically it was terrible. And the other thing is this, right? Like, if there had been 2 assassination attempts against Kamala Harris going into the election, it would have been the biggest story in the fucking world. If there would have been a prominent Democrat activist, like, I don't know who the Democrat version of Charlie Kirk would be. There basically is no one. Kirk was unique in his skill and sort of his ability to affect. There's really, I'm trying to think who maybe a Democrat equivalent would be. I don't know if you could think of someone.
I think there's like influencers, but I would say, and I heard Gavin Newsom say this as well, and I think he's probably right, that the organizational aspect to Charlie Kirk it isn't being reflected within a direct analog in the Democratic Party, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. And so I don't know who I would look like, maybe like a James Carville or I don't know, a George anyway, someone that you identify with, like, here's someone that's out there, like, trying to be a public voice to push for Democrat things, and he has serious connections.
You would forget about it, Rob. I mean, people forgot about the...
That's not true at all. They still talk about January 6th every day ad nauseum.
Okay, I understand that, but that's a little bit... I think the difference is you just don't see Jan 6 as that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Right? And secondly, right, like, if there had been mass amounts of Republicans that would have celebrated like we saw with Charlie Kirk, right? And then if the immediate reaction would have been conservative media to be like, oh, he said this, oh, never mind, we retract that. And conservative politicians would be like, well, they were a communist, AOC gets killed. And like
they would definitely say that, bro. They would definitely say that.
If AOC got murdered, right, at a rally, right?
Maybe
she's a politician, but you get it. She's close to Charlie.
But Rob, you're not looking at me with a straight face and saying they wouldn't call attention to her horrendous views within hours of her death.
They may, but I'm saying
they would definitely.
I'm saying the Democrats would still be talking about it ad nauseum.
Oh, sure. You guys aren't talking about Charlie Kirk. You guys released like fucking We Are the World songs about Charlie Kirk. You like half the time that they killed Charlie, killed Charlie Kirk.
Not the politicians, not the Trump administration, not the politicians. You're right. We're talking about Charlie Kirk. Candace Owens is fucking idiot.
The whole debate is about whether Charlie Kirk was so like now. That is a self-own on a different thing. Like, I agree, but that's on Candace Owens. And
I agree. I'm not. But what I'm saying is that the politicians are incapable of winning a narrative. If we saw violent riots against law enforcement night after night after night done by Republicans in red areas, where basically the mayors sit back and we're like, there's not much we could do, like we see in places like Portland. The Democrats would be hopping on that. There would be the most massive FBI investigation.
I think Republicans are not horrible at messaging a unity. Sometimes they fuck up really bad just because they're either stupid, incompetent, or whatever. But like, do you think think about Chuck Schumer, right? Chuck Schumer, you already gave a bunch of statements where he's like, these are objectively irresponsible statements that he's made, that he's apologized for. He goes, everyone's so aroused these days. We're all aroused. And then later, a Democratic congressperson comes on stage and says, guys, we all need to fuck Trump. I mean, these people, they're not master strategists. Half of their Twitter feeds
saying that, but they know how to go on the offense. They know how to weaponize like a tragedy.
Really? I feel like far too often Democrats are like giving explanations and actually answering questions. One thing that JD Vance does that I don't know how effective this is, but it's at least clever, is he will never ever fucking like directly answer a question. He'll just be like, the real question you should be asking is da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I feel like the Democrats, to the extent that they're doing messaging, sometimes with these like bullshit framing from these biased news organizations who are now being more and more influenced by Trump world and being bought out by Trump affiliates, different than CBS, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing I think Democrats should follow suit is they should stop accepting the framing of Republicans and like sort of
they never get any like they hardly ever get any difficult questions, dude. That's why we saw that woman, what's her name, that's running for governor in California, completely fucking break apart at the most benign question.
Yeah, but that's
Democrats in a nutshell. They're never asked. Nancy Pelosi freaks out all the time when she's rarely asked a difficult question.
You're talking about Porter who is an unhinged person who has other comments of like a potentially and anytime I hear like rumblings, and this was true of Kamala too, that there's like some staff issues of like being abusive to staff. I also find this of waiters, people who like disrespect waiters. There's just something that like goes off and I'm like, something's not right up here. And I'm hearing that also by Plattner in terms of like problems holding on to staff, these personnel issues. And there was some of that going on with Porter, et cetera. But, you know, and Pelosi is ancient. I mean, she's like she's oldest
leader. What's the difficult question you've heard Chuck Schumer answer?
Chuck Schumer answer? I don't know if I can right now off the top of my back remember all the questions asked to Chuck Schumer.
I mean,
the most recent interview that I just heard was Ezra Klein talking to Gavin Newsom. And in that interview, half the time, like, Gavin Newsom will try to say something, and Ezra Klein's like, you're trying to relate to Charlie Kirk or Steve Bannon as people. I don't need you to do that. I don't want you to hear that. So, like, I can't imagine actually a Republican, fielding those kinds of questions in that kind of way. Maybe there are some. And look no further than what they're doing with the Pentagon press corps. They're like imposing all these fucking stooged losers who are just bootlicking chills, even by your lights.
We just lived through 4 years of human vegetable Joe Biden almost taking no questions that weren't pre-scripted and the media completely going along with it.
Dude, I mean, I think that you over make your case on that. That is just
okay. So Jake Tapper, who has no reason to carry water for the Republicans, correct?
I mean, I don't know that he has a reason to carry water for Republicans, no.
Okay. He wrote an entire book about how the media was duped. And now looking back, it seems odd that they didn't have any access and weren't able to ask like difficult questions of Biden, etc.
Yeah, so I think that there is a certain selection of problems that persist there. The first is, I think that there were people who were willing to just go along and are politically biased in that respect. And I think that that's true even of people at some of these major organizations, including but not limited to the New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. And I also think that there's some culpability on behalf of the Biden administration itself for not giving access. And the reason they're not giving access is because they understand what that access would entail. That said, you like blame me for covering up for Biden's cognitive decline. You like pretty much blame every Democratic influencer for lying. And you say like, no one should believe us because we lied.
Yeah, you lied about something so blatant. Well, maybe lie is not the best word, right? You intentionally withheld the truth. And when specifically asked if you saw a cognitive decline, you lied. Is that fair? But I don't know that each influencer was specifically asked. But no, yes, I mean, when you said, if you denied, I don't see evidence of his cognitive decline, you lied. And if you didn't talk about his cognitive decline.
You're not going to find that quote for me. What you'll find from Josiah is Trump is worse than Biden, which I don't accept at the time that happened. And I think that he deserves to eat a little bit of, and shout out Josiah, I love you. I don't know if he's still listening. I think he donated at some point, but I think that some people who are kind of being like, this is just the same exact thing as Trump. But that said, like Trump right now, he looks noticeably worse. And I think
that was never that. No. That was never the accusation of Biden. It wasn't that old man looks older. Old man looks less energetic. It was old man looks like he has dementia. Trump doesn't look like he has dementia.
You see Trump, first of all, Trump is talking about how he has like a bunch of doctors like congratulating him on resolving basic fucking dementia tests that are like easy as fuck. He is acting weird as hell.
Trump's always talked like that.
Why is he getting these MRIs?
Trump's always talked like that. He Trump like that in his first term. And the question is, why did the same media that was hyper focused on Trump's health in the first term somehow completely miss Biden's health failures in his second term and now go right back to questioning Trump's health? So the reason that Trump's out there talking about MRIs and stuff is because he's an idiot and he takes the bait all the time, and he sees Democrats' narrative saying this man's unfit. So he's saying, look, I took these tests, I'm not unfit.
I provided evidence of this was a campaign issue in the Democratic primary. So the media was talking about Biden's age issues and gaffes.
That's not. Yes, while you're technically true that some people talked about it in a benign way during the primary, the truth is during almost the entirety of the Biden administration, and even when they did talk about it, they were incredibly sympathetic and not forceful with the obvious truth that everyone with two sets of eyes could see, that the man was severely mentally impaired, cognitively impaired.
If everyone could see it, in what sense were the American people duped? And if you ask them consistently in polling that they all believed it, then I think that your case that they tried to pull a fast one over the American people, at least from the perspective of the media, at least you should acknowledge that it didn't work, right?
Well, it did work for a long time.
I'm not sure. I think people always had concerns about his cognitive health.
Not to the extent that what it was. What happened was, what we do know is this, that the media was never going to cover the story to the extent it deserved to be until Biden shit the bed in the debate.
Well, that was like a national moment. That was like a what the fuck moment. That was insane moment.
Do you think a week before that Biden was much better than he was during that debate?
No, I think they probably had knowledge that it was much worse than what he put.
And yet the media wasn't talking about it.
No, that's not the media. No, that's not the media. That's the insiders, his little group, his little 3 advisor people who I'm not remembering their names, managing him. And yes, I think that is absolutely like, that's fucked up as shit.
No, it's not just that. For example, we see people like Jake Tapper and others admitting this. For example, George Clooney admitted at the fundraiser that he did before that debate that he's like, yeah, we saw the signs, we knew it was up. Now, that wasn't just the 3 people connected to Biden. That was all sorts of people that were there and saw this, including members of the media.
I want your line in the sand. I want your line in the sand. If it comes out later that someone who's allied with Trump, someone who's close, either his children or some other actor who's affiliated, knows that Trump's health condition right now is worse than it seems. Either he has some kind of like early onset thing, or he has like a brain cancer, and that they're not disclosing it now, that you're going to say that it's political corruption, that it's the height of problems with the journalism and all that shit. That if we have a light case.
No, what I'm going to say is as follows. When the evidence is overwhelming, right, as we saw with the Biden administration, when we see that there is an intentional lack of access giving to the media, and when the media almost on the whole takes the exact opposite stance, that people are believing cheap fakes and things like that see this, which was the line that the Biden...
Somewhere.
But overwhelmingly, you can see there's a problem. And that's the other difference between Trump and Biden.
Did you see the one
Say what you will, Trump is the most available president like in my lifetime. The dude talks to the press way more than he should. And always off script. That's why he gets in trouble so much saying shit.
Fucking up. Wait, he says shit that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the other day, I think I retweeted him saying like, we have a Fed where like he's just saying nonsense and like he's not even shit.
It's not even remotely close. It's not even remotely close.
I think you vastly underestimate the amount of gaffes and verbal slip-ups and clear signs of cognitive.
It's not close. We had one man that was basically shielded intentionally from the press, and the press willfully stood by and let it happen. And then we could see him over and over with embarrassing moments that looked like the guy had no idea where he was at. And then we have with Trump, who talks more to the press than any fucking human being ever should, who's public all the time,
going through cognitive decline.
And he's going through cognitive decline. And of the things you could see a few moments out of the hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of minutes where he's talking, where there doesn't seem to be problems. Now, I'm not going to say that anyone could slip up words here and there. That wasn't the problem with Joe Biden. The problem was exactly what we saw on that debate stage. And we could see that guy over and over. And now the same press that was complicit, knowing full well that they weren't being given access, but not speaking up about it, right? And that saw the same footage we saw and didn't speak up about it. Now they're going, oh, geez, why did they withhold access from us? You knew it too.